Biserica armeană din Iași, un monument istoric înconjurat de zeci de alte monumente. Pietrele tombale datate din cimitirul armenesc din Iași. Aceste texte, dantele într-un alfabet unicat, sunt descifrate de Avedis Hadjian, la prima vedere. Un interviu grăbit, dar intens, la marginea unui anotimp ieșean, suspendat între istorie și viață. Avedis Hadjian este jurnalist și scriitor. Născut în Siria, a copilărit în Argentina. A studiat în Marea Britanie, dar a predat la Paris. Acum trăiește la Veneția. A documentat timp de 2 ani din viața sa o dureroasă carte despre poporul secret, armenii islamizați din Turcia de azi, supraviețuitori ai genocidului din 1915. Avedis Hadjian scrie și vorbește despre ceea ce înseamnă azi diaspora armeană, cea mai puternică formă de rezistență a acestui popor atât de greu încercat. Rodia e simbolul rezistenței lor. Fiecare bobiță salva o viață în marșurile forțate.
Armenian stories are obviously intertwined with Armenian history, which has been very tragic for the last century or two. As so many Armenians of my generation, I'm a third generation Armenian born in diaspora, descendants of genocide survivors, and I am a grandchild of genocide survivors. And bringing me, well, coming to Romania is possibly the oldest continuously operating Armenian community in the world, which is true. And you come here and you see all these tombstones that date back centuries, written in beautiful Armenian script, telling in their own way their stories. So yes, coming to Romania, every Armenian feels this sense of kinship between Armenians and Romanians. I was born in Aleppo, in Syria, but when I was very little, I was 1 year old and a half when my parents, for work, with my very little sister, she was just 2 months old, Araz, moved to Argentina.
Copiii erau mici. Stau în brațele bunicilor care au privirea stinsă, obosită. Părinții însă sunt încă tineri și educați. Fotografiile din anii 70 îi arată plin de speranța că pot ține aprinsă flacăra limbii și culturii naționale în diaspora armeană de peste ocean.
In Argentina, I went to an Armenian school. My father was the headmaster of the biggest Armenian school there. And then I left, I did my primary school in a school called scriitorul in Armenian, which is Saint Gregory the Illuminator, who has basically converted Armenia to Christianity. And then I left to do secondary school somewhere else in Buenos Aires. We have 7 Armenian schools in Buenos Aires, and I left to do my high school at College which is just outside the capital city of Buenos Aires. And that's where I went for 5 years. Argentina is, even though it's very far from my homeland of Armenia, has a very active Armenian community. And I was schooled within an Armenian context. I grew up at an Armenian household. In an Armenian household, my family, our mother tongue is Armenian at home. I speak Armenian with my parents. Most Armenians, yes, communicate in Spanish at home, not in our family. And then I went to an Armenian school. I studied Armenian history, church history, the language, literature, culture. So I've been schooled in Argentina, but within the Armenian community. So I always had, if not a foot here, by here I mean generally Europe or the greater Europe. If we can consider Armenia Europe, I'm not sure about that. But so yeah, always, if not my foot, and I was always here. And you know, at the same time, Argentina is a very welcoming country, like Romania is. And Armenians in Argentina feel exactly the same kinship I was talking about.
All the rights, of course.
Yes, but you know, not every country is that way. But Argentina has been particularly welcoming for Armenians. And when I come to Romania, I feel that sense of welcome. I see all these old churches, I see the warm reception we get here. And yes, in a way it reminds me of my childhood in Argentina. I have realized over the years that every time two Armenians speak about anything, Armenians who don't know each other or Armenians who do know each other, my friends, I mean this, literally I mean this, not a week passes by, and it's been more than a century, that in one way or another the topic of the genocide comes up. Not a week passes by. And for some reason, even if you mention it just once, yes, they came here before the genocide or after the genocide or during the genocide, this and this thing happened. And you're not talking about the genocide or history. It always comes up. So it's always, yes, it's always an unwelcome guest at the table of every Armenian household. Yes, it's very much present and unfortunately alive in this current geopolitical context as we were discussing before. Yes. So yes, it's always hovering there. It never goes away. It was about to go away, and then Azerbaijan launched the attack against Armenia. They carried out the second genocide, forcibly displacing the Armenians of Artsakh, what is called Nagorno-Karabakh in other languages. So yeah, it's never going away. My father was, in addition to being a teacher, he was a writer. He passed away in 2012. He was also a journalist. He was the editor of the Armenian newspaper, a daily newspaper we had at the time called Armenia, in Buenos Aires. So since I was very little, in addition to wanting to become, when I grew up, all the things that kids want to, I don't know, airplane pilot, an astronaut, all those things that you dream about when you're a kid. I also wanted to be a journalist, like my dad. When I was little, I had the fortune of going with him to his office, so I was very familiar with the smell of ink, with presses, with typewriters. You know, I'm talking about a different era of journalism. Last century, yes, it almost feels like prehistory. But yes, but I enjoyed that.
Bedros Hadjian, adică Petru, a fost o figură a diasporei armene peste ocean. Născut în 1933 în Siria din părinți supraviețuitori, a emigrat el însuși în Argentina la 37 de ani, cu 2 copii, Avedis și Aziz. Bedros, devotat unei idei, aceea de a nu pierde spiritul și istoria poporului armean, a scris cărți de gramatică armeană și compendii de mari figuri ale culturii naționale. A fost editor la ziarul Armenia din Buenos Aires și a predat literatură și istorie. Bedros a făcut ceea ce un părinte face la modul ideal. A lăsat ca moștenire copiilor săi pasiunea pentru cultura și istoria poporului din care vin.
I wanted to become a journalist to do exactly what you so kindly are asking me to do, to tell our story, because nobody knew at the time. When I was little, and as I told you, we were unusual in my family that we spoke Armenian at home. So when we were out in the park, and I was with my little sister Araz, speaking in Armenian, at the time the world was, you must remember this, the world was a more isolated place. You didn't see lots of foreigners anywhere. So when other kids overheard us speaking in a very rare language, and you wouldn't even hear English spoken in the streets of Buenos Aires at the time, they would approach us and they would ask us, what language is that? And we would tell them Armenian. Nobody would know what that was. And some, not with intention to offend, would ask us if we were Turks. And you know, it did take a lot of effort to explain them, you know, well, it's different, we're not really Turks, we're a different people, we have a different history, and so I wanted instinctively to become a journalist to tell the story of the genocide in particular. I never thought that our generation, yours, mine, would be going through very similar upheavals and wars that our grandparents saw. I thought that was over for good. And then, you know, we have Gaza, we have Ukraine, we had Artsakh, Nagorno-Karabakh. You know, the monsters are back. The one thing that strikes me is that these people who have these big guns, big weapons, tanks, they bomb cities, they fear freedom of expression. So it means that a poet reading poetry, so it means that a book, so it means that anyone speaking the truth inspires fear in them. And I really feel that after this ordeal is over, after this nightmare is gone, truth and freedom is going to prevail as in the past. We never learn, but truth and light always come back. The word is sacred, and they fear it. You would wonder why someone like Putin or Aliyev of Azerbaijan or Erdogan or all these fascists, Orban, fear freedom of expression, but they do fear it. They have the weapons, they have the state, they have the power of the state, they have the army, so it means the word is powerful. And so we have to speak up, we have to continue to speak up, loud and clear.
Lucrarea vieții lui Avedis Hadjian se numește Poporul secret. 2 ani a trăit în Turcia de Est, căutând armenii ascunși de propria lor istorie. Armenii islamizați la sfârșitul secolului al XIX-lea. Atunci 10.000 de armeni au devenit musulmani pentru a nu fi uciși de guvernul junilor turci. Convertirea la islam a fost masivă. Mii de copii armeni au fost adoptați în familii de turci. Armencele creștine s-au căsătorit cu turci musulmani. Numele lor adevărate le-au fost șterse și uitate. Familii întregi, sate întregi, cartiere de armeni au trebuit să uite cine sunt peste noapte pentru a rămâne în viață. De atunci a trecut 100 de ani și chiar mai mult. Și cele 2,5 milioane de armeni musulmani din Turcia au și astăzi același reflex al uitării ca formă de supraviețuire și evoluție socială.
There's this passage in the Bible, I think it's in Matthew, that says it's an exhortation not to be worried about the future. It basically says, I don't remember the verse, it's a beautiful verse, and I'm misquoting it here, but it's quoting Jesus saying not to worry too much about tomorrow. Look at the bird who sings and eats every day and wakes up in the morning. So it's something like that, and that inspired me to dive into this and decided to find the descendants of genocide survivors in the very geography of the genocide, the occupied territories of Western Armenia, which are now in eastern Turkey. And I started looking out for them and collecting their stories. These people were forcibly converted to Islam. Some of them are now genuinely Muslim. But even among those, some of them do acknowledge their Armenian origins. They know their history. They know they were coerced into the religion of the perpetrators, so to speak. And that's what I was looking for, because for those of us who grew up with the genocide stories, the genocide was about a dead country.
În genocidul din 1915 au pierit 1.500.000 de armeni, dar ștergerea urmelor armenești din fostul Imperiu Otoman a fost o moarte și mai grea. Generații întregi de armeni nu puteau evolua social dacă nu-și schimbau numele, religia, dacă nu-și uitau limba, dacă nu-și îngropau memoria. Un secol amnezic, ceea ce a făcut și mai grea documentarea lui Hadjian despre poporul său ascuns în magma istoriei.
After I finished the book, I felt the full impact of moral exhaustion. And as I was trying to get over it, the second war started, the Karabakh War, and that reopened wounds that had never healed. So yes, it's been the truth is it's been emotionally more draining than I thought it would. And it's really very difficult. It is really very, very difficult. It does hurt you very much. And it hurts you even more because, the perpetrators still refuse to acknowledge their deeds. I think it's an unfortunate fact of life that every person and every people care about themselves and little else. And I think we have to make an effort to really try, at least briefly even, to put ourselves in the shoes of other people. In Armenian we have an expression, I think in Turkish is common too. Everybody knows their own pain. Nobody else really understands what's going on. I know of the horrible things that happen in Rwanda or in Myanmar or in, that's closer to me. I've been there reporting, so I live it intensely too, or in Ukraine, but not other people. So we do have difficulty, even on an individual level, to understand what others are going through. And we do need to make an effort to go beyond paying lip service in our recognition of tragedies or crimes. The problem with humanity is that we have Paleolithic emotions, we have medieval institutions, and we have divine technology. So if you put all that together, it becomes, you see the tragedies that you say. Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and divine technology, which is, it describes the wars that we have. Exactly. With all these drones and highest technology put at the service of death. And, it is what it is, I'm afraid. And I'm not sure we're going to learn the lesson, but as I said, every time we forget the lesson, we relearn it, and there's always this struggle. The best summary of the Armenian spirit has been articulated by an Armenian-American writer, William Saroyan, who has described in a short paragraph what being Armenian means. And he says, go on, destroy their churches, destroy their language, destroy their culture, but then again, see if when two Armenians come together, they won't laugh and reinvent Armenia again. So I guess that's the best summary of the Armenian people.